Hi, my dear viewers. My name is Dr. Anna Brodsky. I practice NHS medicine within Sussex, and I also practice Anthroposophic medicine face-to-face and via video. And today I want to talk about a very surprising topic. It's Tantra and Anthroposophic medicine and health. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is just because the pandemic of depression and anxiety and stress, I think this is a real pandemic. Our mental health, collective mental health, is deteriorating, and we're seeing increased numbers of stress, anxiety, and depression. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of young people who are struggling. And this video is also for you. What happens with stress, as you probably already know anyway, is that with constant demands on our attention, constant stress, constant struggle, our sympathetic nervous system is so upregulated, whilst our parasympathetic nervous system is really dormant. So the sympathetic nervous system is basically our fight and flight reaction, where we release lots of stress hormones and we feel, like in America they would say tired and wired. Whereas our parasympathetic nervous is rest and digest system, that this is when we feel well and we can sleep well. So our task is very simple, really. Our task is to find tools to downregulate our parasympathetic nervous system and upregulate our... Did I say this right? Our task is to downregulate the sympathetic nervous system and upregulate our parasympathetic nervous system. And the reason I'm focusing on this is because a lot of other things are out of my control. I cannot make economy better. I cannot, at least at the moment, I would love to make our system of economy different, so that it's not only based on constant growth, which is not realistic, and it drives people into having to work longer hours than is healthy for them. I cannot change the banking system, I cannot, but I can bring you some self-help tools that will be amazing. So basically, I have tried a lot of different types of mindfulness throughout my life, and some of them have not been so great. Some of them have been just not very efficient. And for about just under a year, I have been practicing tantric meditation. I have a coach. He is wonderful. He's based in New Zealand. So the reason I'm saying that is because you don't have to look for a coach who is going to work with you face to face. Video works just as well, audio perhaps would work just as well, but you do need a mentor, you do need a guide. And what I have been finding with tantric practice is that it helps us recreate that peace on the inside and even bliss. And I'm not joking, it is possible. And once we do it during the meditation, it's also possible then actually to stretch it out into our daily experience. And I'm finding that it helps us also tackle something that's very prevalent, and that is like self-hatred and self-loathing. And I am seeing with every single case of depression, anxiety, I see incredible amount of self-hatred, putting oneself down, not being able to see oneself, who one really is, being so critical. It's just literally painful. It's like sitting there and cutting oneself with a knife. And actually that is literally, as you know, what happens with self-harm. But on the surface it's done for different reasons, you know, to obtain a little bit of temporary relief. But there is self-hatred that we as a collective humanity need to find tools of overcoming, because I personally believe we have divine origin. As you know, practicing anthroposophic medicine, it is implicit that I'm very spiritual. I believe in, you know, life after death. I believe in reincarnation, and hence I believe in karma. And in parentheses, Karma is a different topic, favorite topic of mine, um, that we perhaps will talk about in a different video, because it would be just too much of a deviation right now to go into that. So coming back to Tantra, it really allows us to rebuild this inner peace. And secondly, it really gradually allows us to accept ourselves, and not only consciously, because a lot of the time I have found myself, I have positive self-talk, but at the same time I have found that also I don't love and accept myself fully. And it is really, really critical, because when we hate ourselves, I think we are kind of fragmenting ourselves even more, and whole surroundings of ours right now leads to fragmentation, and it starts with our attention. And fragmented attention, by the way, is very, 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 very dangerous. Fragmented attention, everybody is boasting of their ability to multitask. Well, first of all, it's not really multitasking, it's switching your attention from something to something else, and it always slows you down, because then you have to recap on what you've just done when you come back to the original thing. In my experience, multitasking is actually one of the roots of disease. So have a read of, there's a fantastic book, it's called Stolen Focus. I highly recommend it. I will mention it in my description. So basically, what all these things do, they fragment us. The multitasking fragments our attention. And attention, what attention is, actually it's another big topic, because if you look at Anthroposophic mindfulness, the first exercise is focus exercise. And I will mention it here because it is so highly relevant. So with that exercise, you take a small object, like a match, for example, you look at it and then you close your eyes and you think about it for 5 minutes. And the exercise consists of bringing our wandering attention back to the object, which is a match in this point. And this way we train our ability to focus. And somehow this ability to focus is a very human attribute. And it's also the foundation for any esoteric training. And here, later I will actually talk about anthroposophic mindfulness in the context. So our focus is of high importance, and if you're finding that you cannot focus, it's almost like the caries, like you have caries of the teeth, but inability to focus, it's almost like, if you were to compare, it's like the caries of the whole human being. We're literally fragmenting ourselves, and we have to bring ourselves back together into a whole. And this is why I'm doing this video, because Tantra is the only tool I've found so far that, in my experience, over a period of time, so I have done it for maybe under a year, I have experienced that it kind of closed a lot of gaps on the inside. And you know, we all traumatized, life is hard, perhaps we carry trauma from this life, but perhaps maybe we also carry trauma from our previous lives, and perhaps also transgenerational trauma, and the collective memory, you know, of Holocaust, the wars, etc., etc., the Native Americans having been destroyed, and you know, we carry it all in our collective consciousness, and it's all affecting us. We have a lot of trauma to heal as a collective humanity, and this is what happens in Tantra. It closes those gaps. It feels like you're coming back to yourself. You are re-experiencing that wholeness that I forgot what it feels like. Perhaps in my childhood at some point I felt it, but not for many, many years of, you know. And I will say that anxiety and depression is not, you know, unknown to me. And of course I have empathy for all my patients. I feel their pain totally. And again, this is why we're talking about Tantra, because Tantra has got this capacity to return our peace, unlike any other mindfulness practice. And the second part of self-loathing and self-hatred, which is so prevalent in anxiety and depression, Tantra also has very magical ways of easing us out of this self-hatred and gradually consciously accepting ourselves, and also in my experience gradually reprogramming our subconscious to accept and love ourselves. And that creates such a beautiful foundation for us emotionally that we can then plan our future, we can plan our impact on, on humanity, how we're going to help our collective humanity evolve. And I highly, highly recommend Tantra, but I think like with anything else, you have to find a coach that works for you. And it doesn't have to be face-to-face, it could be distant coaching. And now let's talk about Anthroposophy, Tantra, and health. So Anthroposophic mindfulness really is basically a path of esoteric training. So what that means is that it aims at advancing us spiritually towards a point where we're perceiving clearly, which means like towards clairvoyance basically. But in my experience, jumping from where I'm at towards esoteric training, I find that there is a massive gap in between, and I'm 100% sure I'm not the only one, because we're not starting with a comfortable base where we're at peace and we're balanced. We're actually starting much lower down, where we're distressed, where a huge proportion of population is anxious and depressed. And anxiety is not just something you can put in a pocket. It's kind of, you already know if you're watching this video, right? So it affects your whole entire being. You cannot focus, you cannot function, you don't know what to do with yourself. So starting a practice in esoteric training is really far-fetched from that state, even though our human evolution calls for it right now, that we need to do esoteric training. But we need to close that gap. And here again, this is where Tantra comes in. In my experience, it does help us close that gap. And of course, if you then read about the Tantra itself, it is a spiritual practice, of course, and I think it works like in such a beautiful harmony with Anthroposophy. One of the beautiful things about Anthroposophy for me is that it is all-inclusive. It doesn't deny any spiritual path. It has explanation that it integrates everything, which is very realistic for me, because I believe like truth is one, and we all come from unity, and we all go back to unity, but with a self-consciousness which we didn't have before. But of course that could be a separate video. So I want to summarize that I think tantric practice is just perfectly designed for modern human beings who are in a lot of stress, who are distracted, who are under an incredible amount of pressure from within, from without. We internalize pressure and then we pressurize ourselves on top of the external pressure. It's a total recipe for disaster. I'm not surprised so many young people are anxious and depressed to the point of wanting to kill themselves, because we're not inviting them into a stable world full of meaning. Our world needs meaning, and I think this is why I'm so keen to bring you Anthroposophy, because all my meaning in life literally derives from Anthroposophic insights, and young people need it so much. But I think before something like Anthroposophy can be digested, we need inner peace, because Anthroposophic texts, for example, to read Steiner, you have to find a place of peace, because it is not easy. Reading Anthroposophic books, it is not easy for a lot of people. It's really hard and far-fetched, but I believe once we find that peace within, we're in a much better position than to progress to other forms of mindfulness, perhaps like Anthroposophic mindfulness, which is much more advanced. But it is not suitable for the times of distress, and this is why we need something else. And I think this is the exact reason why I'm doing this video, because I really want you to find a tantric coach for yourself. And please do not do not subscribe to the view that Tantra is all about sex. This is just a Western perspective, which has a place, but it's just one aspect of Tantra. Tantra really can help you find inner peace. And I just wish that you find that inner peace so much, inner peace, inner love, and inner bliss. It is all possible for us. And I think we really need it. It's very attainable. And I recommend that you find a really good coach. I will link my tantric coach down in the description. He's in New Zealand. He has never asked me to do a video like this, but I'm sure if you contact him, he would be delighted to teach you some tantric meditations. But like I say again, the reason I'm bringing this to you is because I feel this is a very powerful tool. It works really well together with anthroposophic mindfulness in the end, or even before you do anthroposophic mindfulness. So I'm sending you all a lot of love. If you want to email me, please do. See you soon. Hey, I'm just correcting what I said. Anthroposophic mindfulness is not more advanced than Tantra. Tantra is just much more accessible in my experience.